Howdy, partners. Welcome to episode 19 of the show that usually stays away from LA and discusses the rest of the West. I can't promise that the Lakers and Clippers won't come up a little bit here. I am joined by my colleague, by the original Howdy Partners guest, making his triumphant return, Andrew Lopez.
I'm back, baby. It only took 18 episodes, but I am back.
Listen, man, it's been a rough go for the Pelicans for a lot of the time since those 18 episodes. That's not true. Actually, it's only been a rough
got really
go
good for a while. Yeah, it was really good for
a
while,
and now it's recently.
It's not been fantastic the last month and a half or so.
There's been a lot going on in the last month or so. There are a lot, or at least a few new star duos in the Western Conference, and I did want to discuss some of the star duos in the Western Conference. And, you know, if we're going to do that, and it's going to be my show, we're going to have to start in my backyard. I mean, let's be honest. The Mavericks have long been searching for that co-star to go alongside Luka Doncic. Hey, did you see Jalen Brunson had 40 for the Knicks last night? And they went out. They went out and pulled off a blockbuster deal for Kyrie Irving. So far, mixed results. Listen, I'm not going to sweat the fact that they lost at the in the final seconds to the Kings and to the Wolves in the first two games with Kyrie and Luka. As far as the offense goes, who's gonna get the ball down the stretch, like they're gonna figure that out. And frankly, they've lit it up offensively. They just haven't been able to finish these games. If we're judging this duo based on, hey, do the Mavericks have a chance to win a championship? I think that we're going to have to address their defensive concerns. And then if we're judging this duo based on, what is ultimately the ceiling, we're going to have to discuss whether this has staying power.
Right.
I mean, Kyrie doesn't have to answer those questions. He frankly, he has. His answer to the question is, hey, no rush, no need to worry about that. I want to focus on right now, and we'll worry about the future this summer, which is a perfectly acceptable and reasonable answer. It's not like the Mavericks are saying, we want to commit. But, this is a test drive for both sides. But when you're evaluating this duo in terms of the ceiling, that's part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I watched that first game, the end of that first game. I guess it was the fourth quarter and overtime of the Sacramento game. I kind of caught a little bit of what happened against Minnesota. It still feels like, as is the case most times when you have new duos, new guys trying to play off each other, you kind of want to make the other guy happy at first. All right, I'm going to defer maybe a little bit more than probably I should right away if I'm Luka. Kyrie's like, oh, no, it's your team. This is you're what's supposed to do. I think they're starting to figure that out. We saw it a little bit in Sacramento. Obviously, we saw it again against Minnesota. But again, like you said, offensively, they're going to be fine. Just on those two talents alone, if they just hog the ball from each other, they'll still be fine on offense because
they can play take your turn type of offense and still be elite.
So obviously you mentioned the defensive concerns. It would be nice to have a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith. You try to figure out where that's going to come from now. But as far as scoring and offensively, it's very hard to match a duo, against those two guys.
Yeah, I mean, they might be the best offensive duo in the league. We're going to talk about pretty soon here one or two that are also in that conversation.
Right.
As far as the finishes to the game, Luka admitted after the loss in Sacramento, hey, I should have gotten Kai the ball back. Right. Luka settled for a tough step back. And look, the guy's made a lot of tough step backs in his career, a lot of clutch tough step backs in his career, but he was gassed. It was his first game back after missing more than a week. He hadn't scored since late in the third quarter. Kyrie was cooking, and he admitted, hey, I should have gotten Kai the ball back. We should have gotten Kai a shot there. And then, he admitted that they probably overthought it last night against the Timberwolves. Also, Luka gave credit to the Wolves defense, and specifically, these guys aren't going to come up in the best duos in the West, but Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels. By the way, Anthony Edwards, whoo boy, he is becoming one hell of a player
He has had
both ends of the floor.
While the Pelicans have not had quite the 2023 so far, Ant has definitely had quite the 2023 so far.
Yeah, and look, they wanted to run a little dribble handoff. Luka gets the ball or handoff to Kyrie, either get a 3 or a quick 2 there. McDaniels, with I don't know what his wingspan is, but it's you measure it in miles and not inches. But he deflected the pass. It's a broken play. Their spacing got jacked up. Anthony Edwards and McDaniels, it's not like either one of them passed up a clean look.
Right.
And then they cough it up. Again, those things happen. But the concern for the Mavericks is, dude, you fell down by 26 points in that game. The Wolves for the first 3 quarters essentially scored at will. You didn't have an answer for Anthony Edwards. You went small and got Gobert out of there. But before that, Gobert was beasting all over you. The bit of good news, the bit of hope, optimism that I can give you as far as the Mavericks defense goes is that Maxi Kleber expects to be able to play coming out of the All-Star break. He had a torn right hamstring. Despite my 8 years in college, I don't have a medical degree. So how the hell he came back so quickly from that? I don't know if it exists. I guess, partial tear, this, that. But
hamstrings are tricky, man. They can be.
Well, ask Zion. And, it's a big old hamstring. But Maxi Kleber underwent surgery, is ready to come back after the All-Star break. He is absolutely the best defender on the roster right now, kind of the switchable 5. Glue. It was so important to them during the playoffs last year. Is going to be that important to them for the rest of the season and the playoffs this year. Having said all that, dude, especially coming back off injury, you can't run his minutes up. You want him to finish games. He certainly can't start and finish. Your minutes are getting too high there. But and J Kidd jokes, hey, we're just trying to outscore people. But they understand you're gonna have to mix some stops in to have any real hope of making a run in the Western Conference.
Yeah, going back to, like you said, down 26, to be able to even put yourself in a position to have a chance shows you how good that offense is, and it shows you were getting some stops. Like you were starting to string some things together. But as the defense improves, this is a scary team to look out for because of those two. When Christian Wood is hitting, that's another option that you have to account for offensively. Not exactly like where you want to, depend on him defensively. You want to have Maxi in there for that much.
And not sure how much he'll play in the playoffs because of those defensive concerns, and frankly, because of trust concerns for Jason Kidd.
Right. And that's been a year-long thing that you have covered very well so far. But I think Maxi coming back obviously gives them, it doesn't give them that perimeter guy that they had in Dorian, but it does give you somebody to help and pick a role, somebody who can still maintain out there just for a little bit, show, help, and give you something more that should be able to help the defense as a whole. But offensively, these guys are just, I know J Kidd jokes about it, but if you just put up 125 a night, that should probably get you a couple dubs, right?
He said in Salt Lake City, the day that the trade was officially announced, he said basically they're going to score 130 or 140 and see if people can keep up. Now, they haven't quite gotten to 130 or 140, but they've gotten close. And that's with Luka and Kyrie kind of, it's still a feeling out process, really, especially for Luka. Kyrie has played with superstars. Like Luka's a different player than LeBron, but there's a lot of similar. I think the biggest difference is, LeBron's ability to play off the ball and to be, you're not throwing lobs to Luka. You're not, right. Luka's not going to get out on the break and throw down tomahawk. So that's the biggest difference there. But in terms of a ball dominant, big playmaking point forward, supersized point guard, whatever you want to call it. Certainly very similar there. Kyrie's played with Kevin Durant. Jason Tatum was young when he played with him. But the point is, like, Kyrie can play on the ball. He can play off the ball. Like, he can do everything you can imagine out of a 6'2" guard offensively. And then the biggest thing with Kyrie is not even so much, hey, given Luka that that guy to play alongside of, certainly that's critical. But the Mavericks were running at a league worst offensive efficiency in the non-Luka minutes, right?
Yeah.
That ain't the case anymore. Super small sample size, 58 minutes, but it's a 127 126.3 offensive rating.
That is pretty
good.
Good.
It's a bigger sample. I'm reading the wrong thing. Kyrie, because he did have two full games without Luka, so 96 minutes, still small sample size, but not tiny. 126.3 offensive rating with Kyrie on the floor and Luka off. And look, we saw it in the fourth quarter last night. Oh my God. I mean, one of the most spectacular offensive stretches I've seen in my life. Like, I was there the night that Dirk had 29 in the fourth quarter and a comeback win over the Jazz. That's the highest scoring quarter in Mavericks history. Luka had a 28-point quarter. Kyrie had 26 in the fourth quarter last night, the highest scoring quarter of his career. And a bunch of that was Luka's going to rest, and this is the luxury of having Kyrie. Luka can actually rest the first 6 minutes of the fourth quarter again. And you're not worried about, oh my God, are we going to score any points? And dude, this guy, he had Lopez. He was cooking, and then he got the ball in transition, weaving in and out of traffic, pull up three. Oh my Lord! My God!
Our friend Timmy Goodtimes in his MVP straw poll, I was almost ready to put Luka number one just because of the game that you and I saw a couple weeks ago, where Luka hurt the heel, and the Mavs were up 31.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, the Pelicans had a chance to win or tie that game if they, if an inbound call goes the right way. And that was just what? That was mid-third when he left, maybe early third.
Mid-third when he left. Yeah, mid-third when he left. And again, you just saw, like, Spencer Dinwiddie was he was a great sixth man for the Mavs last year. He actually played pretty well alongside Luka this year, but just when Luka wasn't on the floor, they couldn't generate offense.
Right.
It's crazy. They're 3-0 games Luka missed since the trade. That somehow includes a game that Kyrie wasn't there for either. But before that, they were 0-7, and they just couldn't generate offense. And again, no longer is that a concern whatsoever.
Not at all. And that's why you make a swing like this. Especially at the price that it cost you. I mean, obviously, we've covered on many podcasts of what you get when you bring Kyrie into town, but on the court, that addresses the biggest issue that you had if you were the Dallas Maverick, which was, how do you score in the non-Luka minutes? That is, as you said, no longer a problem for Dallas. And like I said, just score 125 a night, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and as far as why you make this trade, the other reason is because Luka really wanted you to make it, right? It's like, hey, he's been saying, we got to get better. We got to get better. We got to upgrade. The guy's playing at the MVP level, and the Mavericks were floating around 500, and they didn't have a shot. They didn't have a chance to make a run this year. They lost their second best player for nothing. And it was a significant step back. And so I just don't think you could have looked Luka in the eye if you're Mark Cuban and Nico Harrison and said, hey, we had a chance to get this guy who's a perennial all NBA caliber player. And we just decided, you know what, we should be patient. We should wait until the summer when, not sure exactly who, but hopefully, maybe, possibly we can strike this summer. And Luka's like, hopefully, maybe, possibly, we had a chance to get this dude now. So you couldn't have that conversation. Plus, Jay Kidd was pounding the table for this to happen. Now, Nico last night said he doesn't see the risk. Forget. Let's just live in an alternative reality where Kyrie doesn't have a track record of off court,
Right.
controversy. Like, wipe that out. This is a massive risk simply because of his contractual status,
Yes.
right? And you make this deal. Again, test drive for both sides, understanding, look, we're not going to discuss an extension. Kyrie's not settling for a 2-year extension. The one thing after this trade request that was made very clear, there is a big time market still for Kyrie Irving. It was a competitive market to trade for him. It will be a competitive market to sign him, or, if you're the Mavericks, to re-sign him this summer. And they made that understanding. Here's the gamble and here's the fallback plan. The fallback plan is they'd have significant cap space, not max, but with tinkering, with unloading, financial maneuvering, they could get to a max type slot. They would have his bird rights, perhaps if he decides to go to Phoenix, maybe even the Lakers. Those bird rights could be of significant value. But look, you don't make a deal like this just assuming it's going to be a rental. Obviously, plan A is
Right.
It works out, and this is a duo that's going to be in Dallas for years to come. But again, that's a summer conversation, and I think Kyrie's taking the right approach, saying, "Don't ask me about it. I've given you my answer. My answer is let's focus on now, and we'll worry about the future when that time comes." I think that I truly believe he doesn't know exactly what's going to happen this summer because the guy's living in a hotel in Dallas that he just checked into,
The other thing about why you go ahead and make this trade right now this is as wide open as I feel the West has been in some time. You look at the standings as of today, 4th and 12th are still just separated by 3 games.
Yeah.
That was kind of the good thing about the Pels injury when Zion's okay, he's going to miss some more time. You are a game and a half back from being 4th. You were a game and a half back of going all the way down. So the fact that you were in a situation where there's just you could do whatever you want. There's just, you can get up to home court, you could be in it. So if you can make that jump and go for it, even if it is a rental, I know you don't want it to be. I know you want obviously the long term there, but it's a heck of a year to try to make a push when you got all this room. And by the way, that 4 through 12 doesn't even include the Lakers, who just made a bunch of moves, who are sitting back 2 games behind 12 at 13 right now. So,
oh boy, the Lakers playing for that play-in participation ribbon.
So
break.
You still, it is a mess back there. And just, you go on a 4-game win streak, you might be in 4th. You lose 5 in a row, you might be in 11th. So it's quite a year that you can, especially with all the injuries that we've seen. Obviously, the Pels have had injuries, the Suns have had injuries. Luka has missed time. Obviously, that doesn't seem to be as much of an issue. The Clippers with their injury management situation. The teams that are going to be 5 to 8 are going to be some very good opponents for those teams who have home court. And if you're Dallas, and if you can position yourself and make sure you get 3rd or make sure you get 4th, and give yourself a chance to have a tough series, but have that home court in the first round and just build from there with these two and try to build on that momentum. I think that is that's a smart try to play as well.
And, let's get to the other team that made a massive move at the trade deadline, obviously pretty directly related to the Kyrie Irving deal. Kevin Durant going to Phoenix, and this is the ultimate win now move, but it opens up a window because he does have a few years left on his deal. Chris Paul's future is uncertain, but the duo here is Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. And look, obviously, when you're talking about all 3 of those guys, there are significant injury concerns. KD's recovering from a knee now. Booker just missed an extended stretch, with a groin. He's had hamstring issues. Chris Paul, everybody understands the injury history there. But boy, Kevin Durant and Devin Booker as a duo that you can pencil in for a few years. Look, man, that's pretty scary. That is pretty frightening.
They are going to mid-range you to death, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's perfectly fine, because guess what? It works for both of those guys. And it works for CP and it works for Ayton. That is really set up to be a fun matchup. Or a fun grouping, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Watching what they can do, I think everybody obviously that's where KD wanted to be. If he was moved from Brooklyn, they set up really nice. And I know he started doing some on-court work. I know he's looking, to make his return and, relatively soon. But getting that group, the same 20 or so games to try and figure each other out. Okay, where's the ball going in the fourth? Exactly who's going to play here? I don't know if they're going to have as much, the passiveness that we saw a little bit with Luka and Kyrie. Like, oh no, you do it. Okay, we gotta learn this. I think those guys have a little bit different mentality sometimes when it comes to trying to close out games. But being able to go from D-Book to KD, and oh, by the way, you got to worry about Chris Paul. There's not that many teams that are going to have three guys who you're really throwing on there defensively to try and, okay, I'm sticking him on him. My number two guy's on, all right, oh wait, is my number two guy on Book or is my number two guy on KD? All right, how is this going to work? Oh wait, I still have Chris Paul who can still do things. Obviously, this is built a lot on health, but when that group's together and you still have to worry about Ayton, that's a scary bunch, man.
And look, Chris Paul, it's clear that he's lost. I don't know how much of a step, but he doesn't have the same juice. But this is beautiful because he doesn't have to be a scorer, and like the mind still works. Chris Paul is going to be 65 years old and still able to run an offense. Are you kidding me? And now he's running an offense where it's basically his job to set up two of the purest scorers in the NBA. And in Kevin Durant's case, one of the purest scorers in NBA history.
Right.
Like, I don't know where KD is going to end up on the all-time scoring list, but it's going to be, single digits. I can assure you of that. It's a lot of firepower. There is discussion about, there's not a lot of depth there. Okay, they've got two all-NBA players, and then CP3 and Ayton, who are, at minimum high-level starters.
Right.
They just picked up Terrence Ross, who's a little bit of bench firepower. A guy like Torrey Craig, just to kind of toughen things up, play defense. Josh Okogie. Landry
Shaman in the backcourt. Once they're set up okay.
Yeah, I'm not sitting here telling you like their bench is one of the best in the NBA, but it's they're not going to be playing 4-on-5. Right. And if they were playing 4-on-5, that's a pretty good 4 to take your chances.
I'll tell you, that might be the 4 to run with. Look, and I'll tell you, Terrence Ross, I know he had kind of fallen out of the rotation in Orlando, but that I think was more of, hey, let's just play young guys. Yeah. Let's just see what we're doing more than anything else. Like Terrence Ross is still probably a guy who can go and he's going to have a 16, 18 point game in a playoff game. And you're going to be like, oh, and there, he's going to turn us.
Oh, wait, he knocked down 5 wide open threes because your defense is so worried about stopping these stars.
Exactly. So he's going to have a game where he comes alive, and that's what you want out of bench guys at like toward that time of the year, especially when you're this built around stars. And again, health is key. Health is key for all three of those guys, as you pointed out. But if you get that, maybe that's a team who can score the 125 with Dallas every game.
Well, look, and Phoenix, they're the Vegas favorites in the Western Conference right now. And okay, I understand that. I will say this. Let's not just dismiss the Denver Nuggets. We can talk, when you talk about the Western Conference, let's not just skip over the team that has a comfortable cushion in the number 1 seed, that has the 2-time MVP in Nikola Jokic, who is having the best season of his career, who every night you look up and he's got a monster triple double, that's unbelievably efficient. That is to say he's the best passing big man in NBA history is almost underselling. He's one of the best passers, period.
Right.
in NBA history. I think he has a very strong case as the best passer in the league today. And the Nuggets they've gotten this comfortable lead with Jamal Murray ramping up. Like, look, Aaron Gordon's been their second best player
Yes.
for the entire season, but Jamal Murray is the co-star. And man, you're starting to see Jamal Murray. You're starting to see that dude that we've seen put up 50 plus in a playoff game. You know, he's starting to look like himself. And I'm just saying, like, don't count out the team that's clearly going to be the number one seed in the conference and has an absolutely dominant home record. Before
this recent little stretch that Jamal's missed for reminder stuff, he went 22, 32, 33, 41. It's like, oh, okay, that's the guy again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Jokic making passes where multiple passes a game where you're just like, you want to just stop the game. You want to just stop the game, rewind, and go, what did I just see? How did he see what I just saw?
He is a frequent rewind. And one thing that a guy's a great passer when he makes passes that make you gasp and that you didn't realize the guy was open until he has the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
Like the ball's how the hell did he see that? And, he passes guys open all the time. And those guys, Gordon's a great cutter. KCP's a great cutter. Porter certainly knows how to move without the ball. Jamal Murray's got that two-man game chemistry with Jokic. Bruce Brown's a great cutter. I'm just saying, man, if you're asking, I'm not taking Nuggets over the field by any stretch of the imagination, not with how much stronger the field has gotten, but I still would take the Nuggets if you ask me who's going to win the Western Conference.
It also, I think we are seeing the best version that obviously Aaron Gordon is having a career year, the best version that he has ever been. And he has been miscast, I think, at times in his career of, is he a 3? Is he a 4? Is he a shooter? Is he a not? This version of himself, to focus on defense, focus on cutting, and let everything else take care of itself, is the ideal Aaron Gordon right now. And it has opened up, I think, a lot for what Denver's trying to do.
Yeah, frankly, I thought that they ended up getting the guys in anyways. I thought De'Aaron Fox should have been an all-star. I thought Anthony Edwards was next on that list. I thought Aaron Gordon, though, had a better case than Jaren Jackson Jr. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is the front runner for Defense Player of the Year, but Gordon is a big, he's going to guard the best scorer a lot of times. And he's contributed so much to the Nuggets winning. He's really learned how to play with Jokic. And it's not just the cutting, but it's also it's maybe not even necessarily like he's not going to have 9, 10, 11, 12 assists, but the way that he moves the ball, the way that he fits in that offense, he's had a phenomenal season. And, let's get to the Grizzlies. If we're talking about duos, I honestly, I think Desmond Bane's still their second best player.
So I went through and in prepping for this, and I was just writing down duos that I thought we could talk about here. And when I got to the Grizzlies, I didn't know what the duo was.
Right.
It's Ja, but is it Jaren or is it Bane? And I was like, that tells you got a pretty good one, because you can make it a trio really quick.
Exactly. And that's a good problem to have. I mean,
right.
When you're talking about the Mavericks, it's a duo, and then who's the third best player? I think it's Josh Green, who is a 22-year-old who's made a leap this year, but is just now becoming a starter. That's not ideal. With the Grizzlies, you can make an argument for Jackson, you can make an argument for Bane, and it's a sports bar type of argument. I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter. They all three of them are on the team, and it's not like they're signing up to play in a 2-on-2 tournament. And the thing with Jackson, he's just got to stay on the floor.
Yes,
like you can't. That to me was the argument against him as an all-star is you're averaging only 20-something minutes per game, in large part because you're getting in foul trouble so often. Like all-stars are playing, 34, 35, 36 minutes per game. If the Grizzlies are making a playoff run, they need him on the floor that often. Now, and the Grizzlies' biggest flaw is they are when we look at the teams in the Western Conference, and you're talking about score 130, score 140. The Grizzlies are the one team at in the thick of things in the West that is going to have they're the best defense team in the Western Conference, and pretty clearly. They're also among those teams that are a threat in the West, the worst half-court offensive team. Bane's really got to be great. They went out and got Luke Kennard to give them another shooter, but he's a specialist. He's pretty limited. But obviously Ja can take over games with his speed, his athleticism, his playmaking and transition, but that's tougher to do come playoff time. If you're not a really good half-court offensive team, I think it's hard to be fine in the West.
Yeah, and I think by the way, I just want to say the Jaren Jackson steals, blocks, Reddit, Twitter 24 hours was just an amazing 24 hours of NBA Twitter, of figuring out was he getting steal, was he getting extra, like that was like peak NBA Twitter. And I'm glad it only lasted for 24 hours, but man, that was a hell of a 24 hours.
The man can, trust me, he can block shots, he can play defense. The problem is he also gets too many damn fouls.
Right. And
there's no question those fouls are accurate. Those the scorekeepers can't help you with the fouls.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the home crowd can't take those away. That's the problem there. But what they've been able to do with him on the court, he's got to be in your top 2 maybe for defensive player of the year right now, I think.
I still think he's the front runner. I do.
Well, saying I think he is as well. I'm just saying that he's at worst, what is he? 2? I mean,
yeah.
So
yeah,
what they're able to do with him, it just changes everything. You have Big Steven Adams that you could throw down there to just grab every rebound possible and allow him to kind of do what he wants to do on the defensive end. But to your point, it comes down to the half court. I mean, obviously we know what they can do when they get out in transition. John transition is a scary dude.
It's a show.
I'm making business decisions if I'm in the lanes. All right. So that's what Ja puts into you if you're a defense. So what they can do, and I'll tell you what though, they have, mostly because of what they have done to themselves, one of the biggest targets, I think, on their back.
Yes.
In the league.
100%.
Period. And
teams love shutting up the Grizzlies. There's no doubt.
That is going to be something I think we see come playoff time, and how the Grizzlies navigate this. Bring it on. Bring it on, like we're fine with it. That's cool. Great. You're fine with the West. But when everybody's coming for you, that's just it's a little bit different. And I want to see how they handle that.
Yeah, and one of those teams that has loved shutting up the Grizzlies, has taken great joy in it, whether it was playoffs, Christmas, has been the Warriors. I'm going to mention the Warriors, but we're going to skip past them really quickly because, look, it's Steph, and then he's got 2 Hall of Fame teammates, but as far as duos, like Steph and Draymond, Steph and Clay. Clay's certainly has looked a lot more like himself lately.
I wrote down. I had 4 names written down for Golden State because of how they've played.
You got Poole in there.
Oh, yeah, I put Poole in there too. I was like, there's a lot of combinations you can make out there.
But I want to hit on another NorCal team, and I just spent a weekend in Sacramento. I just saw Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox up close. Yes. De'Aaron Fox, by the way, no question the Cojones Factor Player of the Week. Certainly the front runner for the so-called Jerry West Award, which is
clutch award.
The blatant ripoff of the Cojones Factor Player of the Year. This guy, you can put in basically any kind of permutation of clutch scoring, whether it's the classic clutch 5 points in the last 5 minutes, what I call nut cutting time, 3 points in the last 3 minutes, slice the minutes up, whatever. He's leading that. This man spoiled the Luka Kyrie duo debut. He had 20 clutch points in that game. Now he got extra time because it went into overtime, but still,
did he have 14 just in OT?
He had 14 in OT. Yeah. He had 12 in the fourth quarter, but again, clutch with five within 5, 20 clutch points, the most in any game this season. And again, this is what he has done on a consistent basis. He has been the best closer in the NBA all season long. He made the All-Star game as an injury replacement. I thought he was deserving to get in there regardless. He's been phenomenal. And look, I hated the Halliburton trade. Matter of fact, I had to, I saw Monty McNair and Wes Wilcox, the guys who are running the Kings front office in Sacramento. I had to kind of fess up, like, hey, sorry, I ripped that trade so bad. It looks pretty smart now. And look, I still love Halliburton. He's an all-star. He's going to be a star in Indiana for a long time to come. I hated giving up a guy who's that good less than halfway through his rookie deal. I underestimated just how good Sabonis is and how well Sabonis and Fox would fit together. Sabonis has brought the best out of Fox. And man, look, those guys are tough to stop. Sabonis, he's not Jokic, but he's one hell of a passing big man. He can bully ball. He can, he's skilled around the basket. It's going to be their first taste of the playoffs in 16 years. We'll see how that lack of experience, comes into play come playoff time. But those beam lighters aren't just a cute little story. They're pretty damn good. Yeah.
Shout out to Mike Brown for getting things, on the right path there. Obviously, most teams, you take away one of these duos that we're talking about and things are going to go wrong. I watched a couple of games where Sacramento came to New Orleans for, I guess it was about a week and a half ago, and that's when De'Aaron Fox missed a couple of games. Yeah, and you saw a different team when it was just Domas trying to do things by himself, and they were able to kind of focus on him. But when those two are clicking, there's a reason they have climbed to where they are. They're third in the West right now. They got a 2-game cushion on fourth. They get, like you said, it's not just light the beam, cute story. Okay, we'll see you back in 12th when when everything's said and done. It's like, no, like they're here to stay, and a lot of that is on how both of those guys have played off each other. Going back to the Halliburton trade, I know we talk, okay, what's an actual win-win trade in the NBA nowadays? This is about as close as you can get to it. And I think it's because of fit. Like you, I didn't like the idea of giving up somebody like Halliburton midway through his deal, but talent-wise, you knew what you were getting in Domas. And watching him go out there and kind of hit his next level, and you're like, oh wait, maybe a Halliburton Fox fit is here, but the Domas Fox fit is up here. Like, it makes sense now. Like I said, more so than maybe any other recent trade that you can call a legitimate win-win deal in the NBA. So you can play with Fox, you can play those guys off each other, and like you said, Fox in the clutch this year, not just against. I watched that Dallas game, but not just there, but it just all season he has been their guy. When you need something, you go to him.
Last one I want to hit on, right in your backyard. All due respect to our ESPN colleague, CJ McCollum, but when you talk about the Pelicans duo, it is Zion and Brandon Ingram. And man, unfortunately, we just don't see them on the floor very often together.
No, total. So far, just want to throw CJ in there because I have this memorized right now. CJ, Brandon, Zion, 10 games this year, 172 minutes. In that time, they're plus 60 in those 172 minutes. They have been really good when those three have played together. Problem, they haven't played together that much. When you had an extended period where Brandon was still coming back from the toe injury, Zion was dealing with the hamstring injury, CJ tried to shoulder the load, and it just started to be too much. That's when they went on that 10-game slide. Brandon is starting to look like Brandon again, which is key. He has 25 points in 5 straight games for the first time in his career. He's also done it on shooting 50% or more in each of those games. Okay. He is starting to look like the old Brandon, which is good for them, especially because as you're dealing with Zion Williamson missing multiple weeks after the All-Star game per David Griffin, you still have the easiest schedule in the NBA for the last 23, 24 games. If Z plays even, let's just say half of that, I don't know when he's actually coming back. I think they don't even know. But if he gets going in those last 10 to 12 and you can build some momentum into the playoffs, those two playing off each other, it took some time, obviously. So yeah, Brandon was here, obviously, because of the Anthony Davis trade. So he's been here with Zion from the start. That first year, they were kind of learning each other. And it took a while because he only played 24 games, including the ones that they played in the bubble. The second year, they started to figure it out. Obviously, Zion missed all of last season, but this year, their fourth year together, they are figuring each other out. And I think having a guy like CJ helps to balance that. But when those two are healthy, offensively, I mean, we're putting them up there near the top of the duos in the league. The problem has been the health, and
it's not very often that they're both healthy. And man, the Zion setback news, that was a huge bummer. Obviously the hope was he'd be back after the break, and now it's a weeks and then clearly he's not able to do the kind of conditioning that you need to be in game shape because the man can't run. His hamstring is jacked up.
He had just gotten to the point where he could do some 3-on-3 work, and I think that's when he tweaked it. There was even maybe some outside hope that he could come back before the All-Star game, play in the All-Star game. Obviously, he was voted in as a starter. It's an outside chance of that, but obviously you were kind of hoping get him back after the break, have these 23 games post-break, and kind of go from there. Now you're looking at having him sit on the shelf for multiple weeks now. But if Brandon's playing like this, which allows CJ to kind of fall back into the role that he is more comfortable in, you still put yourself in a very nice position that when Z does come back, you can make that last push, get yourself ready, and then go into the playoffs with that.
Well, and can he be close to peak form going into the playoffs? I think that's the best hope. It's
And at this point, you probably look. I'm not saying you want to rush him back. Obviously, I think you want some games in before. And I'm not saying they're going to hold him out until the playoffs. Like, they're not holding him out until the playoffs. They're going to play him when he's ready. However, I think this time around, you can whenever you're ready to go and you're ready to be Z, get back out there, go or average your 26 and 7 on 62% shooting, whatever.
Shooting 93% from the floor.
So it's fun. So I'm looking up right before I came on, I was looking up the stat about Brandon, 25 straight games, 50% shooting. Where's that rank in franchise history? He's behind two guys. It's Anthony Davis, who did it once for 8 games. And then Zion,
who does it all the time.
done it twice for 9 games. He's he's going to get out there. He's going to be efficient. Once he gets back to being himself out there, then, they'll be in a good spot. Hopefully they can get, a decent amount of games in before the playoffs and try to build on that momentum going into it.
Well, I can promise you this, Andrew Lopez, it won't be another 18 episodes of Howdy Partners before you make your return. We'll have you back before then. I appreciate you joining me. And that'll do it for this episode. Adios, amigos.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.